Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Tuesday, March the 7th, 2023. We take a different approach this week. Our gospel reading is going to be part of what we talk about. It was the parable of the laborers in the vineyard. I forgot about that for a second. And we had the parable of the unforgiving servant the week before. And so what I thought I would do is talk about parables this week, and we'll get back to yesterday or Sunday's parable at the end of the week. Maybe we'll look at several others that preceded it in Matthew's gospel. But today, I just want to kind of set us off in this direction by talking about parables in general. Of course, they're stories, and if you've probably noticed, I like to tell stories, especially in my sermons. I think stories are, a wonderful way of thinking about things. I'm going to say a little bit about that in a little bit, but, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, a story is kind of a verbal picture, isn't it? It's not just stating facts. It's enveloping them in a story that makes sense and that we could follow. Some have described a parable as a story by which something real in life is used as a means of presenting a moral thought. Others have said that a parable puts the known next to the unknown so that we could learn. I want to come back to that in a second. In that case, usually a narrative taken from nature, from everyday human experience. And maybe the simplest definition of all that I remember learning years ago is that it's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. The comparison piece comes from the word parable actually comes from the Greek word parabolo, accent on the third syllable. And what it meant was to put one thing by the side of another for the sake of comparison, to compare, to liken. And so what do we usually see in the parables? Jesus is saying the kingdom of heaven is it's like a landowner, it's like a king, and so forth. So there's that comparison of, again, taking something that's unknowable, like the kingdom of heaven. Well, how do we even know that? But explaining it or pointing towards it by using the example of something that we can know. Outside of the Bible, one of the most famous parables that we probably all heard of is the story of the boy who cried wolf. Remember that one? In that, the young boy enjoyed yelling wolf and laughing as all the adults ran around in a panic. But one day he sees an actual wolf, cries out wolf to try and get somebody to come and save him. But at this point, no one believes him anymore and no one comes to help. The story, as it's been said, is extremely memorable for children, seems to stick in our minds much better than the simple statement, don't lie. Because why? Well, as someone once said, as human beings, we respond more strongly to stories than to arguments and theories. Our brains seem to be hardwired to think in terms of narratives, and parables usually affect us more deeply than simple principles stated out loud. For example, if you were told the story of the boy who cried wolf as a child, you'd probably remember it pretty well, and I certainly do, because that story has a profound impact, and it does have that kind of impact on many children because of its simplicity and also the grim fate of the main character. If an adult simply told you not to lie, you may not have understood why, but the story makes that lesson about as clear as it can be. A pastor by the name of Dr. Larry Pettin came up with some things to think about, some keys to understanding parables. He writes, parables usually provide insight into the nature, coming, and growth of the kingdom of God. Parables by design are intended to be surprising. They often sneak up on us. There's often a twist in the end, like there was in the story of the laborers in the vineyard. Why do I keep forgetting that? It was just Sunday. Parables, he said, are used to stimulate thinking, cause the hearer to carefully contemplate what it is that we're hearing. Parables, again, use everyday objects and events and circumstances to illustrate spiritual truths, usually, again, with a new turn or twist. Parables reveal more truth to those with receptive ears and kind of hide truth from those with dull ears. And so, usually you have to kind of think about it. And if you do think about it, the insights are powerful. And finally, he says parables comprise about 35% of all gospel teaching. Jesus liked to teach in parables. He liked to tell stories. And someone once said the parables help to clarify the ground rules of the kingdom. If you've ever played baseball, he says you know that certain parks have ground rules, and the umpires and coaches discuss the rules before each game. For example, at Wrigley Field, a ball that gets lodged in the vines by the fence is an automatic ground rule double. If the ball lodges in the vines, the fielder can raise his hands and surrender, even if he can see the ball perfectly well. And again, the batter is limited to a double. The Metrodome is a place where infielders and outfielders temporarily lose balls in the glare of the roof, where batters lose home runs to giant speakers, and where once everybody lost a baseball that just never came back down. As you might suspect, all these quirks necessitate some special ground rules, most of them relating to what happens if a batted ball hits any of the many speakers suspended from the roof. So in these parables, Jesus is kind of laying out the ground rules of the kingdom and of what heaven will be like. And so that's what we're going to be talking about this week. We're going to be looking at the parable of the sower, the parable of the weeds. We're going to go back to the other previous weeks, the parable of the unforgiving servant, and then wrap it up on Saturday with the parable of the laborers in the vineyard, which was our reading this past Sunday. So looking forward to kind of spending a couple of minutes looking at each of those parables with you this week. Hope you can join me, and looking forward to seeing you, or having you hear me, I guess, tomorrow. Until then, take care. Have a great day. Bye.